Hi, Ten. So, our goal for today is to understand about deprivation in London. So, the first thing we really need to do is to get these two definitions down to our book so that you understand, you can have got a clear idea of what deprivation means. Um, and also, we're going to be moving on to how do we overcome deprivation, how do we solve deprivation and inequality in London through the processes of redevelopment, which I know we've touched on a little bit. So if you want to pause this video now and copy down those definitions, that'll be the best place to start. Okay, now you've done that, you're going to need to cut out this image from your sheets, and then you're going to need to follow the instructions in yellow. Essentially, when we talk about deprivation, it's quite a complicated uh, concept. There are essentially seven different domains of deprivation, and what that means is um, when we're looking to measure it, there are seven different areas, and you can be deprived in one of these areas and not in the other six. But generally, we think about areas that have multiple deprivation. That means that the conditions for uh, several, if not all, of these factors, and is negative or is kind of means that the area is kind of less developed as other areas. So what I'd like to do is once you cut this out, stick it into your books with space above it and below it. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and consider what would that for each of those different factors, what would a less deprived or an affluent area look like above it, and what would a more deprived area look like below it. So I've done a couple of ones for you here. So when we're considering income, an area that has a high income um, is going to be not considered as having kind of income deprivation. When we look at that, when we look at these areas, we're going to see kind of nice, tidy, neat houses. Maybe there's going to be sort of busy cafes or restaurants in the area. Maybe there's going to be expensive cars in the driveway, maybe electric cars. Whereas if we were thinking about in a more deprived area, we might find sort of less tidy lawns, we might and houses. We might find evidence that maybe of the houses need painting or they need repair. So sort of broken windows, broken bricks or gates. Um, and I mean, these are areas that generally are going to have sort of low income. When we move on to employment, I suppose so an area with employment deprivation is often going to have a lack of well-paid jobs or any jobs. So maybe it's going to be high unemployment. Another interesting concept is underemployment. So maybe this happens where migrants might move into an area, but they're not able to get jobs that they're qualified for. So let's say you have a degree in teaching, but you end up working in a coffee shop. We'd consider that as underemployment. You're not sort of fully utilizing your talents. Um, so what would that look like in a less deprived or an affluent area? We'd find a wide range of well-paying jobs or well-paid jobs. We find kind of that could be in the knowledge economy, or it could be that the area's got kind of good transport links to areas um, with high-paid jobs. But we also need the key is a range of jobs, so jobs that suit all the different people in that community. It might be that it's employment deprivation because in that area there's lots of jobs, but they're not suitable for the people who live there. So those people can't gain employment in that. So someone like Canary Wharf, if you've got people who are living around it that do not have degrees and do not work in the finance or legal or marketing sectors, then maybe there's still going to be employment deprivation. So now what you need to do is pause this video and see if you can jot down for each of these different domains what um, an area with high deprivation or an area with low deprivation would look like and why. Okay, right. Just to sort of check that and sort of see what that means. Like here we've got an image from an estate in Bermondsey. So Bermondsey is somewhere in the inner city residential area. We can see the Shard in the background. So it's the south of the river. Um, What I'd like you to do is try to annotate on some of those different ideas to sort of suggest why this area might have higher levels of deprivation. Okay, so what in this image leads us to believe this may be considered a deprived area? Okay, so we want to think about what this looks like across London. So you've got a map here of deprivation in London, and I'd like you to do is stick this in and try to describe the pattern of distribution. Okay, so I've given you some key ideas to include there, and once you've finished, you could try to consider how does this match or correlate with the Burgess model, the different zones we were looking at a couple of lessons ago. Okay, so your final task for today, and hopefully this is where we can put everything into practice. So this is where we want to be thinking about why do areas become deprived, and particularly this is looking at areas um, around in and around the inner city, places. So Canary Wharf went through this change before it was redeveloped. Stratford went through this change before it's redeveloped, and I'm sure you can think of lots of other places that maybe have some of those features we've been talking about earlier. So what we need to do is create a flow chart out of these different statements um, to show how they link together. Now, there may also be like kind of links within this. It's quite a complicated process, like web, really, rather than a flow chart. But um, I suggest we start with this first blue box, which is often how deprivation in areas starts when a big major employer shuts down. Okay, so I've started this on this slide here. You can see, so first we might find the large employers um, close, and that will then lead to high unemployment. High unemployment means people have less money that they can spend and invest in the local area. Now, what that means is local businesses are going to close, or they're going to relocate to other areas. So there's going to be less services, and there's going to be less investment, private investment from businesses into that area. Okay, so now your challenge is to finish that spiral and try and link in all of these other statements to explain why areas can become deprived and fall into poverty. Okay. Um, as always, I'll be on Classroom. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch. Good luck.